topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Who is January Jones? She is not a young, beautiful, talented actress on Mad Men. She is not an older, gorgeous, exotic dancer from the Johnny Carson Show. She is an author, and she wrote Thou Shalt Not Whine, the 11th Commandment, that reached #1 at Amazon.com. She is a reality TV golf personality with World High Stakes Golf televised on HDNet. She is a humorist and winologist expert. She is your featured host today on January Jones Sharing Success Stories. So sit back, relax, and get ready to laugh and listen to Ms. Jones with her eclectic roster of guests as you learn life's lessons. These stories plus sharing equals success. Welcome, and remember, beware, because you are entering the no whining world of January Jones.
Hello everyone. I hope you're having a glittery and glowing day. I'm January Jones, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. As you can see, I have a new brand. It's called Glitter Granny Gifts, to give or to get. It's my website for anyone who loves to shop for glitter, hats, jewelry, anything. I'm now an associate affiliate at Amazon, along with my assistant Golden Doodle, Ginger Ale. Now, every granny out there, get ready to glitter and glow with me. Subscribe and stop shopping with us at glittergranny.com. As some of you may know, my husband is a disabled veteran, and thus the profits from this website will go to the DAV, Disabled American Veterans, Sarasota, Florida, Company A. Now, for my listeners, let me ask you a question. Do you remember seeing Little House on the Prairie on TV? And of course, you've heard of the wonderful Laura Ingalls Wilder books. Do any of you remember who Almanzo Wilder was? Now, would you like to meet someone who can share with us the behind-the-scenes stories from the Little House on the Prairie? Also, let me ask you, have you ever met someone who performed on Broadway in West Side Story? Also, if you are a golfer, do you remember the David Faraday golf show? Oh my gosh, my husband and I watched it all the time. Let me ask you, have you ever heard of a new book, Prairie Man, Life and Beyond, The Little House? If you can answer yes or maybe to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. And I'd like to welcome you to January Jones Sharing Senior Success today. It's time to rest, relax, go get some cheese, get some wine, get some crackers, and join us in the no wine zone. Now, let me tell you about my guest. He is an actor on screen and on Broadway. He's a producer, a director, and he's best known for his role as Almanzo in The Little House on the Prairie. And he was a producer for the NBC Emmy-nominated series Faraday for over 10 seasons. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome to our podcast, Dean Butler. Hi, Dean. How are you doing today?
Well, fine, January. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And I have to tell you, I've enjoyed reading your book. And it's amazing. I come away from it with the one big theme. And that theme is gratitude.
Well, thank you for that. That's, I think that Prairie Man is hopefully is consistent with the no wine zone that you
Perfect.
You love.
Perfect.
So Yeah. No, I've been very fortunate in my life, January, no question. Very fortunate.
Yeah, and I could tell once I read your book. Let's go back, because I was intrigued by the similarities between the role you became famous for and the similarities with your actual family, your family history. What an amazing coincidence. When did you discover all this?
Well, my family history, I lived. But I didn't connect. I think the thing that was the surprise is that I didn't connect the values that I was stepping into trying to work as an actor, starting in San Francisco and then later in Los Angeles, and then after that in New York. But I was, I wasn't thinking about who I am as a human being, how I was raised would impact the kinds of parts that I would get the opportunity to play. Oh, wow. So I think when you're starting off as a young actor, you think, well, I'm aspiring to be an actor. I can do anything. And I think that is, while it may be an optimistic view of things, professionally, casting is kept very close to who people are when they walk into a room to audition. I did not think about, as I walked into audition for Little House, I didn't think about the fact that I was raised on a family ranch that was founded by my great-great-grandfather in 1885. I didn't think about the fact that I grew up on this ranch with no electricity, living by the light of coal oil lamps. And this is why it wasn't year round. This was in the summer months. We rode horses every day, that we bathed twice a week with the water that was heated in kettles on the stove and put into the bathtub, that we ate around a large round table with a big Lazy Susan in the middle, that the food spun around on. You learned Lazy Susan etiquette as a young person. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a large multi-generational family. And so like the Little House world, there were always my elders around, my extended family around. And I think as an actor, as a young actor, without realizing it, I carried all of that into the room with me when I went to audition. And I think that the observational skills of Susan Sukman, who was our casting director, and then later Michael Landon, saw all that without really me having to describe it, because I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking I'm coming into audition for this part. Mm-hmm. It's only been in the later years that I've realized that all of our lives, from beginning to wherever we are in our life, it's all a cumulative experience.
Oh, yeah. And, people tend to think life is random. Well, it is, but there's also a lot of destiny pulled into your story that I thought was remarkable. And I love the way a theme throughout your book was about casting directors.
Don't make mistakes. Yes. Well, and that's a very nice thing for me to be able to say. I'm sure, look, when we don't get parts as actors, we all say the casting directors made a mistake, but they really don't make a mistake. And casting is not, as much as it's a deeply personal thing, when you walk into the room, you're offering yourself up to these casting directors and producers and directors, but it's not a personal thing for them. They're just making it, it's very personal, but it's personal about you. They're just making an assessment very quickly about who fits best into this world that we are making a show about, or making a movie about, or doing a play about, or a musical. They are making those assessments, and the actors that get those parts get them for a reason, and because they communicate some essential qualities that show, that movie, that play needs in order to be successful. I feel very fortunate of all the things I walked in the door on. And there were many, many things I walked in on the door on through the years. That Little House was something where there was a yes. Yeah. That this fits, because I love what it stands for and represents.
Oh, for sure. And along with destiny, there's a lot of karma that goes along with this magnificent trip you've been on. It was interesting that you wrote about doing forever, and that was a wonderful Judith Blume book that was made into a movie. And that's basically where the door opened for you, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I walked into that meeting. I think I had to have been, I think I was probably 21 when I walked in the door for that into my agent in San Francisco. This was pre Los Angeles for me. I was literally a kid in college. I've been doing commercials in San Francisco and Under 5 Parts on the streets of San Francisco and other shows. But this was really a big part. And when Mary Goldberg, the casting director, who was coming out of Los Angeles, came to San Francisco to meet young talent, she saw something in me right away that said, and she knew that they had cast or were probably going to cast Stephanie Zimbalist to play the female lead in this. And so knowing that, she was looking for someone who she believed would be a good fit to work with Stephanie. And again, it's just, and then the way I was raised, I was a polite young man. It was please and thank you. It was shake hands, how you do, which was a good fit for Stephanie and who she is. So, and John Cordy, who was the director, who was a wonderful Mill Valley-based director, who had done Emmy Award-winning shows, thoughtful, kind man. I think, but he saw something in me too. So, but Forever is definitely where it began. And it's sort of interesting to me to be associated with this wonderful love story that has been a source of such controversy for so many people for so long. Oh, yeah. This book Forever has been, or had through the years, has been widely banned by school libraries, because there are a lot of parents out there who don't want their children reading about a young person looking at that first love experience. And I don't know what they think their children are, what they're going to find out about all this. Yeah. So treat it in a thoughtful way.
And it's so timely what you're speaking about, because I'm just so upset with all this book banning and people worried about what children are going to read. Give me a break. I mean, we've been reading these books from, I'm 80 years now, so for quite a while. And this to ban books is just so against everything that I believe in.
Okay. I think it's against the best traditions of having an educated, thoughtful public too. You can read a book and get a lesson. And I love the idea that books are a learning opportunity, that they present themes perhaps that are different than the themes that we live in now. I mean, look, Laura Ingalls Wilder's books have been banned by people because of the way that she wrote about interactions with the Osage Indians and the way that she portrayed her father participating in a minstrel show in blackface makeup. Now, it was a paragraph in both cases in two different books, but those two paragraphs set off this wave upset that we can't have anybody speaking fearfully or negatively about Native Americans, and we certainly can't have someone doing a blackface minstrel show. This was a function of life. This happened in the United States. I think the great thing is we are much more careful today about the way we speak we are much more sensitive and plugged in about the way we speak about Native Americans. And I don't know, I have had no experience or knowing about anybody doing blackface minstrel shows. This isn't going on anymore. I think there's an opportunity for people to read this and ask the question, what is that?
Well,
And you can say, we don't do that anymore, or we've learned something about this. We have evolved as a people. I think that's the powerful lesson that can be taught, as opposed to suggesting that this never happened. I think that's really a mistake. And we don't, if we don't know where we don't know where we're going, frankly.
For sure. And This is wonderful. I knew I was going to love having you on the podcast. And I love the part where I read in your book that, you know, you go on the podcast and you get same old, same old, same old. So I was thinking, what am I going to talk to him about that he hasn't talked a lot about? Well, book banning is definitely on the table. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Right now, we're going to take a break for people who want to glitter and glow.
Welcome to Glitter Granny Gifts to Give or to Get. Hosted by January Jones, aka Glitter Granny, and her Golden Doodle Ginger Ale. If you're a granny who wants to glitter and glow, it's time to join us for a sparkling shopping experience that will be unique and so very special. Whenever you need a unique and spectacular gift, then Granny will help you find it. Along with gifts for family, friends, and holidays, there are even glitter gifts for coworkers, in-laws, doctors, and you can even find something for your friend who has everything. If you need a really good gag gift, you'll find it here. Hats, canes, shoes, accessories. When it comes to glitter accessories, Granny and Ginger Ale are on board with everything you can imagine, and then some more. The favorites are at her website, and remember, she is adding to this list almost every day with lots of fun gifts to give or to get. Granny has created a website that is glamorous and glows with glitter products to wear or to use every day. As she says, if it ain't got bling, it doesn't mean a thing. Now let me tell you about her glitter hat collection. She actually has too many to count. Her collections are must-have accessories for any glitter granny who enjoys getting attention everywhere she goes. Remember, if people are going to stare at you, make it worthwhile for them. And canes? Everyone will ask you, where did you get it? Can I get one too? Now, just go to glittergranny.com and check it out.
Welcome back with my guest today, Dean Butler, who is not a one.
Granny, you are quite the enterpriser here. Look at you. I mean, I've never seen so much bling in a minute and 20-second commercial.
I know. I have to cut it down to a minute, but yeah, I do. And that came out pretty well. And of course, I adore bling. And as I said, if it doesn't have bling,
I see it all over you. Yes.
Well, here, let me look. You have to see even my canes. I have glitter canes that match every outfit and every hat. So it's kind of a little bit of a trademark. But before we let's talk about your book. Where can people get it and where can they follow you? Let's share your website information.
So the best place to follow me on social media is my handle I use is official Dean Butler. That's all one word, official Dean Butler. And that is my identity on Facebook, on TikTok, and Instagram. And I think probably most of your audience would be most familiar with Facebook if they're involved in social media. And that's the best place. That's really the best place to follow me, because those platforms, the content is much more dynamic in those, and we're putting things out multiple times a week to keep our audience knowing what's going on with us and what's going on in the Little House world. So official Dean Butler, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Wonderful. And also for listeners, if you go to Go to my bookshelf and you'll find Dean's book there too.
Oh, wow. Right.
Yeah, oh,
and the book is also, of course, available on Amazon at Amazon.com, where all books are available. I mean, you can get any book in the world in Amazon, and then BarnesandNoble.com as well carries the book.
Yeah, we do plug Amazon now that I'm an affiliate. Okay, Dee, now I want to really talk about the things that interest me most is your Broadway experience. I was in New York. You won't believe how long ago. Well, it was 1964, and I discovered Broadway. What was it like for you to go to Broadway? I know you had to learn how to sing.
I had been studying for during the Little House years. I started studying with a wonderful voice coach in Los Angeles named Nate Lamb. He was the cantor at the Stephen Weiss Temple in Los Angeles, and he coached everybody from Broadway people to rock and roll stars. I mean, he was coaching all kinds of people, and so I spent a lot of time with Nate, singing scales and listening to his jokes and stories, and him encouraging me to step. And he finally said, all right, you're ready to go out and start auditioning. And that led to some small theater in Los Angeles that I did. And then my agent reached out to me to tell me that a production of West Side Story was being cast for a tour in Japan. And that's where I did West Side. I mean, obviously West Side is an iconic Broadway musical, but the tour I did, it was an A tour. It was sanctioned by Jerome Robbins. So he came to rehearsals. It was all, that was a big deal, obviously.
For sure.
It was directed by one of two directors that he gave permission to direct A productions of the show, which meant that the shows were designed, they had to recreate the original Broadway production exactly. So all the choreography, the blocking, everything about the shows that are the A productions of West Side Story must, at that point, had to be absolutely dedicated to the authenticity of the original production. Mm-hmm. I went and sang for the director at my agent's house. Jack Wagner, who was doing General Hospital at the time, was doing this tour, and something came up that prevented him from doing it. And so they were looking for a substitute. And the great thing for me, and I've said this so many times, January, so many great things in my life have come out of Little House on the Prairie. Little House was huge in Japan, huge. And so I think the motivator for them to reach out to me. And so I went and sang, and I think sang well enough. And they hired me, and 10 days later, I was on a plane to New York to rehearse for 2 weeks in a beautiful rehearsal facility in New York where all Broadway shows. And then on a plane off to Tokyo, starting the tour in Tokyo that led us to 4 different cities in Japan over a 10-week period. And it was an incredible experience. And I have to say, in the beginning, I really overmatched by the show and what its demands were between the rehearsal, the double days, and all of that was cooked by the time we opened. But through the course of the 10 weeks, I got stronger. And I think by the end of it, I was singing it pretty well. And it's a tough score for Tony. That first 17 minutes of West Side Story,
brutal.
Most Tony's show is in the first 17 minutes in terms of the tough vocal demands of the show.
It was brutal.
Yeah, no, it was. But the good news is I came back from that really singing pretty well. So when my agent reached out to me and said, Stephen Sondheim would like to meet you for Into the Woods. And I went down to the Music Center in Los Angeles, and there was Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine and Paul Gemignani, who was the musical director, Joanna Merlin, who was a wonderful actress and casting director for Stephen. I sang for them, and they hired me 2 hours later. And 10 days later, I was on a plane to New York for 2 weeks of rehearsals that started in September. And in late September, it was late September, I made my Broadway debut, being put into the show, replacing Chuck Wagner, who was going out on the road to do Cinderella's Prince in the national tour. And I spent a year on Broadway doing 8 shows a week. I did 320 performances of the show that year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just to be surrounded by that kind of talent in that situation in the Broadway world. It was something I never really believed I would have a shot at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not something I dared to aspire to. I just didn't think about that. But when it happened, I stepped in as well as I could and went for it. And I had a great time. And I was just blown away to be a part of what was really Into the Woods. If you've seen it, is a very smart, thoughtful show about fairy tales and what happens after Happily Ever After. Mm-hmm. And that's the hook into the show. And it's a very interesting, thoughtful, smart, funny, and poignant evening in the theater. It's really good.
Well, I was so thrilled to read about your Broadway experience because I really feel that's the ultimate. And I totally related, Joe, because of my husband's career as an airline pilot. We spent time in Japan. And the part where you talked about the Japanese audience, where they're so polite, they don't clap until the end. And oh my gosh, you had to be there. You had to be there to believe it. It's so true the way it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really, at first it was a little disconcerting because you think, are we failing here? But they prepared us for this. But until you've got an audience, and the theaters were packed. It was sold out. Oh yeah, wonderful. It was sold out, but because the Japanese love West Side Story, and they love Little House on the Prairie, 2 very different shows, but they love the Jerome Robbins dancing, which was very well done in our production of this. And they are very respectful. They don't want to distract you.
Yeah, they're so polite. We're going to take a break now. And even though Dean's only, I think, 68, he's so young. I'm 81, but guess what? I've written a memoir too.
Introducing Living and Dying Without Whining, a memoir. 80 years of magical moments, written by January Jones. Ms. Jones shares her most exciting and magical moments. Patriotic moments. Landing on aircraft carrier USS Carl Vinson. Staying overnight, then catapulting off. Revealing moments. Working for the CIA for 5 years. Thrilling and comforting moments. Meeting Charles Lindbergh and Neil Armstrong together. Sassy moments. Swinging 60s and the 70s. The age of Aquarius. Exciting moments. As a TV contestant on Joker's Wild and Family Feud. Reality moments. Playing in the World Series of Golf on reality TV. Career moments. As a stewardess for Eastern Airlines. Touching moments. With meeting a half-brother she never knew about. With many, many more magical moments. Living and dying without whining. A memoir. 80 years of magical moments. Written by January Jones. Available at Amazon.com and Audible.com.
Welcome back. And Dean's books are also available at Amazon.com. You know, now I have to get to where I really want to go. And this is what my husband and I have been talking about. We want to hear about the Faraday Show. Oh my gosh, we wouldn't miss an episode. And you got to do that for 10 years. And then the guy was brilliant. He was pre-Stephen Colbert. He was, you never knew what you were going to get. What was it like working with him?
I loved working with David Faraday, and all of us did. It was we had a small team that was doing this show. We started with half-hour shows, and then moved after the first season to hour shows because people wanted more. So Golf Channel expanded it to an hour, and that's where it stayed for the next 9 years, or 9 seasons. It was just great. You know, when I got a call from my friend Keith Allo, who was director of original programming at Golf Channel. I'd worked with Keith in motorsports and at the Olympics, and when he went off to the Golf Channel, I just thought, well, I'm never going to work with Keith again. I don't play the game. I'd never played the game. But he called me in May of 2011 and just came right out. And I always loved getting calls from Keith because Keith always had something interesting going on. So when he called and said, how would you like to produce a talk show? I said, well, Keith, I've never produced a talk show. That's not something I've ever done. But he said, well, you're a good storyteller. So I know you can help craft this. Mm-hmm. And so that was the step into it. And I got to know David in a meeting that we had at TPC Sawgrass the first time that we were going to shoot him with a couple of caddies, and an episode with a couple of caddies, and Bones and Phil Mickelson's caddy at the time. I can't remember his name right now, but he's a wonderful commentator now. He's terrific, and his name totally escapes me, and I apologize for that. But he's great.
I know what he.
It was a fun thing. I learned a ton about golf during the process, and I learned a lot about structuring a half hour and eventually then later an hour program. David was the thing that was so great about David is that you get the real thing with David all the time. He doesn't, because of his life challenges, and he's had many, and those who know his story know that he's had many life challenges. Mm-hmm. David comes at the world in a very authentic way all the time. If he's excited about something, you see that. If he's not excited about something, you see that as well. And what his humor, everything is filtered through authenticity with him. So what you get is the real thing. And what David was so brilliant at, I thought, was that he was willing to bring his failings, his disappointments, his foibles in life, his struggles, without whining about them. He talked about them and made them something that was instructional and inspiring for other people. The letters that we got from people were really, more than anything else, letters from people who, like David, are alcoholics in recovery, drug addicts in recovery. This is who was David really. He spoke to those people because they saw his heart and his commitment to deal and cope with what he had been dealt with in his life. Mm-hmm. And it was good, and it drove his humor. It drove everything. And I think he always said, "I want to have guests, not victims." So he never wanted. There were no gotcha interviews. There was nothing where he was looking to walk somebody into some trap about their life. If he felt like if someone didn't want to talk about something, they didn't talk about it. Yeah. He he would inevitably tell a story about himself doing something ridiculous that make anything that the guest could say be so benign by comparison that people felt free to share their own stuff because they knew. I mean, so many people who came on knew David and wanted to come on because they just loved his energy. They wanted to have that conversation with him. And he did make people feel safe.
Well, he was,
come on.
That's the word. He was an open book and nothing was off the table, but you were safe when you were with him. He was not going to do harm to anyone. He was just delightful. We don't have much more time, but I want to hear really about the biggest success in your life. I want to hear about Catherine and your puppy.
Oh, well, that's how nice. So I met Catherine Cannon, who I met in, 1981. She was coming to Simi Valley to audition for the female lead in a show that Michael Landon was doing with Merlin Olsen called Father Murphy. Right. And we just met in passing. It was a very casual meeting. I remember it. I completely remember it. But I was involved in my life in other ways. Catherine was married at the time. There was nothing that was going to come of this, but we would run into each other because Father Murphy was a pilot was made. It was bought. The show went on the air. I ran into Catherine at company events all the time, and NBC puts their talent together all the time to do different things. And so we had many opportunities to run into each other. She eventually was divorced. I was married briefly and ended that relationship. And we met again 15 years later after our first introduction. And I think I was ready at that point, and when she said hello to me and I turned around and started sitting there, and I'll never forget how she looked and what she was wearing and the sound of her voice and all that. And I remember just saying to her and I was in sort of a funk at the time. And I just remember looking at her and saying, just ask really directly, can I call you? And she gave me her number. And this was before cell phones. And, I went straight home from this audition where I had run into her. It was another audition. It was for a commercial. Neither one of us got it. But I went home from the audition. I called her immediately. She heard the message, it was there before she got home. We got together, 3 days later or something, and had coffee at the house that we've been living in together for 28 years. And that was it. Yeah. And
that's one of the things I talk about, Dean, in my memoir, that we all have magic moments. And if you look over your entire life, I had one when I met, actually both my husbands, and you had one when you met Catherine. And I think this goes right back to what I started out with, is I adored reading your memoir because of the gratitude. And you're not just talking about career, money, success. You're talking about the personal things that happened in your life. And those are the so important things. And I've loved having you with us. And I want you to come back. And the next time, if you will come back and visit with us, I'm going to bring ginger ale. If you'll bring your...
that's very nice. We can talk about Benny. Benny is such our 3-year-old Cavachon. We love this dog. He made a huge difference, as dogs do, and you come to realize what a huge difference dogs make in your life. So I'd be happy to share Benny with ginger ale.
Oh, I think they'd be adorable together. I think it would be would be a magic moment in puppy land.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Dean. And for our listeners, thank you for coming into the No Wine Zone with us today. Share our show with everyone you know. Remember, stop whining and then start smiling. And then if that doesn't work, you can just start eating chocolate. Lots and lots of chocolate. Take care, stay safe, and be sure to glitter and glow until we meet again. Bye-bye.
We want to thank you for listening to January Jones Sharing Success Stories. Always remember Ms. Jones' personal mantra, if you can think it, you can do it. That's what all of our guests have done with their lives, and so can you. You are the ultimate success coach in your own life. All you need to do will be to start sharing your own story with your family and friends. We hope that our guest stories will encourage you to explore an equation in your future that will combine your creativity plus connecting with others will enable you to be successful too. Always remember, your passion plus your purpose will equal prosperity as you explore the wonderful world of January Jones.